Hello everyone, and thanks very much for all the support with all of my videos. Today I want to speak about the war in Ukraine and the implications it has for us here domestically in Ireland. Over the last week we saw the visit by Simon Harris to Kiev, where he offered over 36 million euro towards Ukraine. Yesterday it was reported that over 50 modular homes will be built in Kiev by the Irish political establishment, which will have kitchens, appliances, toilets and proper facilities for people in modular housing. Isn't that ironic when they say they can't build modular housing for people here in Ireland? They can do whatever they can to send it across to a country that's not even a member of the European Union. We've seen a move towards an escalation in this war, in particular in the last number of days, with the push by Zelensky to send long-range missiles into Russia rather than looking for peace and looking for the instructions of his bosses in Washington DC to decide what to do. Today we'll see the visit of Keir Starmer to Washington DC, and he'll be looking to get the go-ahead from Joe Biden, who's not even standing for re-election, who's not mentally capable of standing for re-election in the US upcoming elections, and yet he's looking for his permission to send long-range missiles into Russia, which will lead to a huge escalation in this conflict. But of course, these psychopaths at the top of society are more interested in pushing war for their own self-serving interests and their own imperial interests rather than pushing for peace, which always serves the interests of ordinary people. War has never served the interests of ordinary working class people. So we should be demanding peace here in Ireland more than all. Being a country that has been colonised for many, many years and experienced so much of the horrors of what that has caused, that we should be standing up for peace, which is in part of the Irish Constitution as well. But of course, the political establishment in Ireland aren't interested in serving the needs of ordinary people. They're more interested in bowing down to their masters in Brussels and Washington DC. In Britain, for instance, David Lammy and Anthony Blinken visited Kiev over the last number of days, and over £600 million of supports were offered to Ukraine. Starmer has already said that up to £3 billion will be offered every year to keep Ukraine as long as it takes in this conflict with Russia and their proxy war. And over £500 million were given for World Bank lending supports to pay for day-to-day expenditures, such as civil servants pay, many more public servants pay, teachers and pensions as well. This shows you that it's complete basket case, Ukraine, and this proxy war is absolutely disastrous in terms of what it's caused, in terms of loss of life, and not to mention the catastrophic fallout of the immigration chaos, which we've seen particularly keenly here in Ireland, with well over 100,000 Ukrainians in Ireland as well. But it is important because the Irish context is very important to this, because if you look at the language and the push towards more war, we've seen that in Ireland over the last period of time. Erosion of our neutrality every single time. We've seen it for years and years through the use of Shannon Airport as a de facto military air base for the United States, through the illegal wars they've had in the Middle East. Most recently we've seen the use of Shannon or Irish airspace for flights that would traverse Ireland as well on the way to performing a genocide in Palestine. And it is very important to note as well that the whole push has been for more war by the Irish political establishment, in particular Fine Gael's junior defence minister, who was recently, over the last number of days, has visited Finland, Lithuania and Estonia. And coincidentally, some of the money that was offered over by Harris last week, the 36 million euro that was handed over to Zelensky, is a lot of that's going, some of it's going towards the World Bank funds, similar to what the British have done in terms of paying for basic day-to-day expenditure, and some of it has been offered towards other countries such as Lithuania. And it's interesting that McNeill, who was a former advisor to the failed housing minister Owen Murphy, has also been pushing for this as well, and pushing for more money, but also been on her visits to Finland, Estonia and Lithuania over the last number of days, and looking for the increase in defence budget. But she's also come back with a few ideas of her own. Inverted commas, the political establishment's ideas would be to push down a reserve defence force where we'll have the whole of society focused on the issues that are facing people and facing a possible escalation in this conflict with the use of long-range missiles now into Russia. We've seen constant escalations being pushed in this war over the last number of years. And she will talk of things like the hybrid threats and disinformation, and it's important to protect our critical infrastructure. It's not important. They talk about critical infrastructure when they don't think about the critical infrastructure for people's needs in Ireland, such as a right to a home, a roof over your head. So many people who are struggling to exist, being evicted, paying sky-high rents. And of course, that's not critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure is, and fighting against the Apple tax again, is critical infrastructure, isn't it? Part of their development. But this has been at the news. As I've said, Ireland's neutrality has been under serious attack. They've tried to destroy our neutrality for many, many years by entering European battle groups. Over the last number of days, Irish Defence Force members have been in Gormanstown working with a German-led battle group. Up to 172 members of the Defence Forces are working in this 5,000 strong battle group that is on standby for deployment in 2025 in crisis situations. It doesn't say what these crisis situations are, but if you read between the lines to what's happening geopolitically and domestically here in Ireland, you can read exactly what's happening because of the move towards escalation in this conflict in Ukraine, which is absolutely despicable and flies in the interests, as I said, of ordinary people. So when you have a sitting US president who's not standing for re-election because of his mental incapacity, who's given the go-ahead to Keir Starmer today to send those missiles, Storm Shadows, into Russian territory. Putin has already said there will be a response. And this is a huge, huge escalation in this conflict, which is just absolutely crazy. And these really psychopaths at the top of society need to be held to account by ordinary people. And in particular, we see it here in Ireland, where so many of the Irish political establishment are just completely cowardly and complicit in what's going on. Rather than standing up for the needs of ordinary people, this is going to cause huge, huge more pressures and carnage. In the first instance of what's happening in Ukraine, but also the geopolitical fallout as well, and the economic fallout as well, and the migration fallout as well. Because Harris also said last week that they will be getting prepared to have more Ukrainians visit Ireland, come to Ireland over the next number of years as a temporary protection directive continues. So where is it going to lead? More war, more chaos, and who benefits? The military-industrial complex, the super rich, the corporations, and who's going to carry the can? Ordinary people. So watch out all these little moving parts, in particular Jennifer Carroll McNeill, who's a complete wannabe war hawk. People like Micheál Martin also as well, Minister for Defence, who's been meeting the Atlantic House over the last year. I did videos on that, you can look back on it. You can see a huge erosion of Irish neutrality, the movement of the triple lock, and the move towards dragging us into a European military union. Not to mention Irish Defence Force members now working with bigger EU and German-led battle groups. We also have members of Defence Forces who are now in Brussels working with NATO. And even yesterday, Blinken said the road for Ukraine into NATO is irreversible and inevitable. So if you piece all this together, it's pretty obvious what's happening. We need to stand up for peace. Ordinary people need to stand up against the war because of the fallout it's happening, looking for a peaceful resolution and negotiated settlement. But of course, all these negotiated settlements previously were all ignored, even though they were brokered by France and Germany, the Minsk Accords, Istanbul Agreement by Boris Johnson. But they don't want you to talk about the Nord Stream and the explosion of the Nord Stream. Huge environmental and terrorist attack on European territory. and many more issues you don't want to talk about, all captured by the corrupt corporate media here in Ireland. So please share my videos. I appreciate if people can, because people need to use their voices to speak up to what's happening and speak out and be aware of the international picture and how it impacts us here domestically at home in Ireland. The economic fallout with the sanctions, higher energy costs and so forth as well, businesses going to the wall. It's happened across Europe, and not to mention the human fallout and catastrophe from wars, which always serve the super rich. War is a racket, as was famously said, and famous book around that also as well. So appreciate all the support with my videos. Please press subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please share my videos also as well. And thanks for all the support. Take care. Bye bye.